To another Short Courses with me, Professor Caster, where we take the larger courses and we break them down into bite-sized chunks. Also, at the end of this particular course, we will be trying up a new thing that I'm going to be calling Storytime with Professor Caster, where we will be discussing any kind of interactions, personal or on the gaming table, with the said casters.
Vladimir Tzepesci, the Great Prince of Umbrey, Kodor warcaster. For the first time in generations, the people of Umbrey stand united behind their rightful lord. Reclaiming the birthright denied his family for centuries, Great Prince Vladimir Tzepesci rides into battle wielding weapons of the ancient Tzepesci horse lords and leading the people of Umbrey to seize their destiny. While the Umbrian lands have been under Khadorn rule since the Empire conquered Lael, their fate was initially uncertain. Many among the nobles and Kazi sought to claim them, but driven by greater purpose, Vladimir persisted even as he fought in the Empress's name. He steadily won the loyalty of all Umbrians, who gathered to his banner, whether Khadorn or former Laelese. Proving her political prowess, Empress Vanar declared that any noble who would be considered for the lands of Umbrey would have to fight to defend them against external enemies. Amid escalating Crixian and Solmenite assaults, only Vladimir was willing to risk his life for the Umbrian people. By the Empress's decree, the two smaller Volskis and the single Laelese duchy that had been Umbrey were joined into a single massive Volsk beholden to Great Prince Tzepesci. The Great Prince was left to defend Umbrey virtually on his own, which freed up the soldiers stationed there to fight in other battles. Though Vladimir had been able to defend Volsk against the invading armies of Crixian undead and the Protectorate Zealots, Signar's new king has also set his sights on conquest of Lael, so once more Vladimir Tzepesci must ride into battle. Should he fail, the shame will fall on him alone. He has gathered his vassals and great Umbrian hosts to wage the latest war in his homeland, and his soldiers know they fight for their destiny as well as the safety of their families and ancestral lands. Vladimir has gone so far as to cement his ties to the crown by entering into the engagement with Empress Ayan Vanar, thus united in the royal lines for the first time in history. Though other Khadorn nobles see this as a shrewd political move, one that will make the impossible for his detractors to accuse him of sedition, it is also with great sacrifice. Once again, Vladimir puts aside his own desires for the needs of his nation, knowing that in this union he can avoid the prophesied doom that might otherwise bring darkness to his people. Vladimir Tzepesci rides his warhorse Sada into the head of the elite guard of heavy cavalry and wields the weapons of his ancient namesake, who usurped the throne and united Umbrey 4 centuries ago. Carrying the spear in one hand and a mace huntsman in the other, Vladimir feels his blood stirring with power as he lashes out with dark sorceries during battle. This particular Vladimir is a sight to behold on that horse, though. He is definitely the Umbrian king they've been waiting for centuries. Also, his engagement was probably a blow to poor Sorska, and probably explains how she moved up to the man-of-war division, being so icy cold that she just permeates cold. Makes sense.
Alrighty guys, time for a story time with Professor Caster. So on this particular event, we were actually called to aid in the prevention of a siege. Me and, of course, Vladimir, the Prince of Umbrey now. But this is actually kind of unique because I don't usually get to ride horses into battle that often, nor do I get to actually, halt a siege that's going on. It's a siege in Lael. We were outside the fortress and it was being attacked by some Minites. And of course, I actually did get a actual pretty decent revenue of people with me as well, because they hired me plus a bunch of steelhead, just because, steelhead's usually pretty prone to working with Kodor because their contracts are always good. So here we are. The sun was beginning to rise on the battlefield as I rode along Vlad and his loyal warjack Drago, who is usually like a horse biting at his chains. The Minites that we were going up against were actually holy zealots, which we've been having trouble with taking fortresses in Lael, because after the Lilies government went under, as far as Kodor was concerned, the Minites decided that, in the upheaval, it was a good time to actually try to start pulling different territories out, at least way farther north of their deserts they have in the Bloodstone Marches. So we're actually going up against some of their militiamen, plus an entire couple retinues of exemplar, which anybody that knows an exemplar, these highly trained religious zealots are incredibly difficult to take on. Even just basic solo guys by themselves are a just menace on the battlefield. However, on our side, we're actually accompanied by one of the most elite melee forces, being the Iron Fang pikemen, as well as Uhlans and a number of officers that are equally skilled. Maybe not quite the religious fervor of the Menites, but definitely worth their salt in battle. Able to take on huge warjacks and warbeasts together as one weapon does make the battle very even. And of course, on my side, or at least the revenue I was in control of, were steelhead gunners, steelhead halberdiers, and of course a cavalry unit as well, because with Vladimir, he actually carries his own cavalry units with him, which makes him even more deadly and quick. So we were able to almost do a pincer maneuver. His guys on one side, my guys on the other, and we would close in from two different directions in this battle. My warjacks slamming into the enemy warjacks. We're not entirely sure who the warcaster was of this particular army, just because as soon as we started pushing, we kind of lost him in the fray, or her. Honestly, we have no idea. We just know the warjacks were active and they were giving us heck of a problem. But with the pressure on, we needed to take the day, because that particular fort was actually in a junction of a trade route, so it was needed. Mano a mano, every time you take down an exemplar, the rest of the units get stronger for whatever reason. I guess they have some holy zeal. They must fight back, yada, yada, yada. So a lot of focus needs to be on taking out the entire unit all at once, right away, which if you have warjacks like me, that would make it way easier, because you don't want to give them the time to reciprocate the attack. As well as, since I was on a horse, it allows me to do a lot more maneuverability. I don't usually ride horses, but I know how to ride a horse, because any warrior worth their salt knows how to get up on the saddle when they need to. So after what felt like about 4 hours, we ended up whittling them down to the point where they actually had to get off the field, because they were losing pretty badly. Partially because our Iron Fang pikemen in their shield wall formations just push and push and push and do not let up. And my steelhead gunners, of course, I always position them in points that, they're not going to be attacked, because the moment you get into a steelhead gunner unit in a melee fight, the whole unit starts breaking down rather quickly, because, they're not really designed for melee combat. However, with their pressure, because I had quite a few units of them for, pushing off a siege engagement, we were able to take the field relatively quickly, but the army was just too big for that, so we actually had to do it very meticulously. And of course, Drago had his fair share, because Drago actually loves fighting infantry models. For whatever reason, he has some kind of murderous intent. I'm not sure if it's because he's a very modified berserker or what, but he has some kind of glee in tearing through enemy soldiers. Like most warjacks, have an enjoyment of taking on other warbeasts or warjacks, but Drago has some kind of just innate enjoyment. Like, you can feel it buzzing from his cortex. I can't control his cortex, of course, because it's like a door and cortex. I'm not entirely sure how those work, but you can feel the almost ambient enjoyment he has slaughtering lots and lots of men. Ugh, disturbing. I don't know why Vladimir keeps him around, but he has his own opinion about his particular warjack. But that is the story. After that, we were able to push off the siege, protect the city, reinforce the city's garrisons, because they were pretty depleted at the time, just because they were kind of out of the way. And we got it going. So that is me with Vladimir, the Prince of Umbrey, or Great Prince of Umbrey. I don't want him coming at me to have that discussion. Also, his horse that he rides is actually called Vasta. Vsada. I know I probably mispronounced that. I don't know why my Cadoran pronunciations are so bad. I've worked with them for so long, but that is how it goes sometimes. Alrighty, students. Well, that does it for this short course. And as always, thank you, Privateer Press, for letting us read your fantastic lore. And as always, your homework is going to be, please like, subscribe, comment, let me know how I'm doing. and share it with your friends and fellow gamers alike so we can increase the class size. And as always, class dismissed.